There is a fragment of clay, no larger than your palm, that sat in a museum drawer in Illinois for years while no one thought to ask what it once held. When researchers finally scraped the dark residue from inside it and ran it through a mass spectrometer, the machine returned a chemical signature no one expected this far north. Caffeine, theobromine, the markers of a stimulant, a drug. And the plant that makes them did not grow within 500 miles of where that cup was buried. The cup is roughly 900 years old. It belonged to the largest city that ever rose in North America before Europe arrived. And that city drank something it could not grow. You drank one this morning. Maybe you're holding one now. The cup in your hand connects you to a place most people in your country have never heard of, by way of a habit far older and far stranger than the word coffee. Long before you, there were them, and they wanted the exact thing you wanted when you opened your eyes today: the lift, the sharpness, the small chemical permission to begin. So the question is not whether your ancestors chased caffeine. They did, on 3 continents, for thousands of years. The question is what they were willing to pay for it. And in one place, on the banks of the Mississippi, the answer was a road built across half a continent to carry a single leaf. This is the story of that city, that cup, and the drug that outlived them both. Begin on a floodplain in what is now southern Illinois, a few miles east of where St. Louis stands today. 800 years ago, this ground held the densest concentration of people anywhere north of Mexico. Archaeologists call the place Cahokia, though that was not its name. Its name is gone. What remains is earth. At its center rose a mound of packed soil that climbed roughly 100 feet into the air, raised basket load by basket load, by hand, across generations. It is the largest earthwork ever built in the Americas north of Mexico, and it is still standing. Around it spread broad plazas, a ring of timber posts the size of a small forest that tracked the movement of the sun, and thousands of homes. Around the year 1050, in the span of a single generation, this floodplain went from a scatter of farming villages to a planned city of many thousands. Researchers still argue about why it happened so quickly. A religious awakening, a political union, something the people there believed in strongly enough to move the land itself. And then, 2 centuries later, they walked away. By around 1350, the city stood empty. No siege, no invading army, no clear catastrophe in the ground. A great place, abandoned, its name forgotten long before anyone arrived to write it down. The bones remember what we have forgotten. So does the clay. Now, the cups. Among the pottery left across Cahokia and the smaller settlements around it, archaeologists kept turning up one particular kind of vessel. Tall, narrow, shaped for drinking, not for cooking or storing. Some carried an incised symbol that later peoples of the American Southeast used to mean water and to mean ritual. For decades, these vessels were simply catalogued and shelved. Beakers. Then, in 2012, a team led by a researcher at the University of New Mexico did the one thing no one had done. They tested what was inside. The findings ran in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The residue carried caffeine and theobromine, alongside a third marker, ursolic acid, the chemical fingerprint of a holly plant. The vessels dated to between the years 1050 and 1250, the very height of the city. Here is what the residue revealed. The people of Cahokia were brewing a caffeinated drink, in special cups, as part of something that mattered enough to make the cups for. And the plant that gave the drink its power did not grow anywhere near them. The drink has a name from later centuries, written down by Europeans who watched it being prepared. They called it the black drink. It was brewed from the roasted leaves of a holly that grows along the warm southern coasts, and in the centuries when records begin, men drank it before war councils, before judgments, before any moment that demanded a clean body and a clear head. They drank it to purify themselves. Often they drank it until they were sick. That holly carries a botanical name earned the hard way: Ilex vomitoria. The people who named it were not being poetic. Taken hot, strong, and in volume, the black drink made the drinker sweat and, frequently, empty his stomach, and that purging was the point of it. They did not drink it for thirst. They drank it to be scoured out and made ready, and it was strong. By some estimates, the brew carried as much as 6 times the caffeine of a strong cup of coffee. Whatever you ordered this morning would have been considered, in that council house, a light dose. But the holly is the problem. Ilex vomitoria does not grow on the Mississippi floodplain. It is a coastal plant. Its range hugs the Atlantic and the Gulf, hundreds of miles to the south of Cahokia, well beyond the reach of anyone who lived there. The people of the city had the great river. They had rich, black soil. They had everything a settlement could want, except the single leaf that made their sacred drink possible. So they brought it in. Every cup of black drink raised beneath that 100-foot mound began as a bundle of leaves carried, traded, and relayed across hundreds of miles of forest and water, from the southern shore into the center of the continent. Now imagine what that meant. Not one trader, but a chain of them. Not one journey, but a steady supply, year after year, decade after decade, to keep a city of thousands in a drink it had decided it could not live without. A drink anyone could have brewed at the coast for nothing was, here, a luxury worth a road across half a continent. That is not the behavior of people scraping to stay alive. That is the behavior of people who had decided a morning ritual was worth the wait. And Cahokia was not alone in this. Now look 1,000 miles to the west, at the same moment in time. In the high desert of what is now New Mexico stood Chaco Canyon, and at its heart, the great house called Pueblo Bonito, a complex of stone rooms stacked 4 and 5 stories high, with hundreds of chambers. The same researcher who tested the Cahokia beakers had, a few years earlier, tested cylinder jars pulled from Pueblo Bonito. Those jars, dating to roughly 1100 to 1125, held the residue of cacao. Chocolate. And cacao does not grow in New Mexico. It grows in the tropics of Mesoamerica, more than 1,000 miles to the south. So here are 2 of the most powerful centers in the native North American world, separated by deserts and rivers, and 1,000 miles of hard ground, and each of them is hauling a caffeine-bearing plant across an enormous gap at real cost for ceremony. One reached south to the Gulf for holly. The other reached deep into Mexico for cacao. 2 cities, 2 drugs, the same hunger. Now, step back from the cities and ask the question sitting underneath all of it. Why this molecule? Why would 2 separate peoples, who never met, build long roads to obtain the same chemical from completely different plants? The answer starts with the plants, not the people. Caffeine is not a gift. It is a weapon. The plants that make it, the holly and the coffee shrub alike, did not evolve it to wake anyone up. They evolved it to kill. In the leaf and the seed, caffeine poisons the insects that try to feed on it, and it bleeds into the soil to choke off rival plants trying to grow nearby. And here is the part that should unsettle you. The coffee genome, sequenced and published in the journal Science in 2014, showed that coffee evolved its caffeine on its own, separately from tea, separately from cacao. Different plants, on different branches of the tree of life, each invented the same poison independently, at least 5 times over. The holly in the black drink belongs to a family called Ilex. Its cousin in South America, another Ilex, is brewed to this day into the drink called yerba mate. The same family, the same chemistry. Hunted by people on 2 continents who had no idea they were chasing the same idea. And what every one of those peoples did, from the council houses of Cahokia to the tea buried in a Han emperor's tomb in China, was take a plant's defense and turn it into a right. They drank an insecticide on purpose, and they built their gatherings around it. Why? Because the molecule works. It does to a human brain a fraction of what it does to a beetle. It blocks the chemistry of drowsiness and leaves you sharp, awake, and ready. A poison at one dose, a gift at another. The plant never meant you any kindness. You simply learned where the line was, and you have been standing on it every morning since. Cahokia fell silent around 1350. The mound stayed. The cups went into the ground. But the drink did not die with the city. When European travelers reached the American Southeast in the 1500s, they found peoples still brewing the black drink, still using it to purify, still passing the cup in a fixed order around a fixed circle of men. The city was gone. The habit had outlived it by centuries. Some things never died. They only changed their name. The holly drink faded. Coffee crossed an ocean to take its place. And the plant in your cup this morning was unknown across the whole of the Americas 900 years ago. Coffee itself, as a drink, is young. The earliest reliable evidence for anyone brewing it comes from the Sufi monasteries of Yemen in the 1400s, where monks drank it to hold off sleep through the long night prayers. That makes the thing in your mug barely 600 years old. The behavior it serves is thousands of years older than the bean. Now imagine what that meant for the people who carried the leaves. A man walking north for weeks with a bundle of holly across his back, knowing that at the end of the road a city was waiting, that the cups were dry, that a council could not open until he arrived. He was a supply line for a drug. You have one too. Yours runs through ships and ports and roasters, and a stranger behind a counter who learned your order. You do not see the road anymore. The road is still there. Go back to the cup in your hand. The lift you feel when the caffeine reaches your blood is the same lift a man felt in a plaza below a 100-foot mound, 800 years ago, holding a tall clay beaker marked with the sign for water. He paid for his in distance. You pay for yours in money, and you forget it the moment you swallow. The chemistry has not changed. The hunger has not changed. Only the surface has. The cup, the road, the name. You did not invent the morning ritual. You inherited it from people who moved the earth and crossed a continent to keep it, who had nothing but the river, their own backs, and the refusal to begin a day unaltered. And the world you wake to was built in their dark. If something here reached you, the cups of others are still in the ground, waiting for someone to ask what they held. They are patient. They have waited 900 years already. You will find them in the next telling, and the one after that. They are not going anywhere.